Over to you.
Welcome back. I'm going to close the second session with something that is going to be not every day, in the sense that in numismatics you see that there's often a lot of attention for the older coins. There is often a lot of attention for coins, and the pieces I'm going to show you are neither old nor coins, actually. They are, in fact, replacing coins. And there's a reason for everything, but I'll explain that to you. The non-human energy has become a necessity of life. It is hard to imagine times when a high bridge was a major obstacle to anybody with a cart, especially if they didn't have a horse. So how can you imagine your life without it? Well, maybe the best thing, the best way to imagine it is, if you were a dictator, would you be able to take the non-human energy away? I think the clear answer is no, you couldn't. That is why gas tokens are part of the story, part of this absolute necessity of everyday life, and that is what makes them interesting. The picture you saw on the previous slide is of the first gas factory in the Netherlands. It was established in 1824, and in 1834 it was sold to Imperial Continental Gas Association, which explains why in the smear above you see ICGA. The gas at the time was mainly used for street lighting, for the simple reason that there was no infrastructure. There were no pipes going from the factory to private homes. That had to be built, and that was actually the objective of the city, to build that infrastructure. But the use of gas for lighting explains why there are the street lighting. There is a street lighting in the foreground of the picture. Incidentally, the factory was in Marnixstraat, which is now a street close to the center of Amsterdam. And you can imagine what that means if the factory explodes and gas, or burns. You can probably imagine that that would have been a major disaster, and there was not much of attention for that. Now, as I said, the objective of the city was to build an infrastructure of piping. So in that way, they could build a demand for the gas. And the gas is great fun for cities, because cities are dirty and gas is relatively clean, especially if you compare it to coal. So that actually more or less failed. The reason for that was that this first plant I just showed you ran on rapeseed. So it was what we now call a biogas plant. And the price of the input was so volatile that it was very difficult to charge a price for the gas delivered. Solution was found 2 years later in Rotterdam, which is a great competitor of Amsterdam, where a plant was opened for coal gas. The coal was gasified and then used for burning for different purposes. And that actually caught on. But in spite of the development of the distribution networks, gas was actually used for a limited number of purposes. In the case of heating, gas was first replaced by coal. Coal, of course, has the problem of coal monoxide, which is lethal if you do not ventilate well. So it was eventually replaced by oil. Electricity replaced glass for lighting. You can see it only in black and white films. And gas was actually used mostly for cooking. It still is, actually. The situation changed radically in Netherlands in 1959 because of enormous amounts of natural gas found in the north of the country. The quantities found were actually larger than those in Algeria, which is a major gas producer. And the problem was what to do with this natural richness. Well, one thing is, of course, put it in pipes, put it into private houses, and let it burn there. Next, please. And once you do that, once you take your gas to private homes, you do want to be paid for the gas. And that is a problem by itself, because the consumption of gas is only known afterwards. And afterwards, it's always more difficult to get paid. Paying in advance is a problem because you don't know what the consumption is, and the solution you see here. This ugly little thing was something that actually stood in the cellar of my grandmother. It's a machine it's a gas meter that was built in Germany because the concession was the meter was actually the meter market was actually dominated by the firm of Elster. If we start from the center, you will see a coin slot. It looks a bit like an equity, but that's, yes, right. That's what it is. That's the coin slot. That's where you deposit your gas token in. After you inserted the gas token, you turn the knob right below it. The circle like that. Yes, no. There, that's it. You turn it. You can hear the token fall, and you'll know that you'll have an additional amount of gas. Below that is a ring. The ring is actually the way to pull open the door, but you can't do that if you don't have the key, and the key is below the ring. This part of the machine is called the vault. The vault is the part where the tokens are collected, and then once every while, somebody comes along, opens the vault, and takes the tokens out. Well, they weren't always tokens. In fact, in many cases, there were coins. Not any coins, but a coin of 2.5 cents. It's 2.5 millimeters in diameter. And that is an important value. I will come back from time to time. Originally, the price of a cubic meter of gas was 7 cents. That meant that if you wanted to have a cubic meter of gas, you needed 3 tokens, and then you'd pay 7.5 cents. Therefore, you had to get a return. You wanted to have a half cent in return, and you would get it. But imagine what that meant for the people who were emptying the meter. Not only that they have to carry a big load of 2.5 cent coins, but also they had to have a reserve of 0.5 cent coins. So in the big city, a meter collector had to be assisted by a coin bearer. The only other place that I know that coin bearers were used was in China because they had these fantastic strings of 1,000 cash coins. But you could see them in Amsterdam also. So for the next 20 years, the gas token changed not very much. A number of municipalities started using simple, sorry, that happened before, but since I got older, it happened more often. The meters led to an enormous amount of 2.5 cent pieces. And no enterprises wanted its lights to go out at an appropriate time. No family wanted to be without gas, especially when the wife was just about to start cooking dinner or just before it was getting dark. So there was a shortage of 2.5 cent coins. And the mint in Utrecht, which is at this time the only mint in the Netherlands, could not cope with it. And the First World War made copper a strategic metal, which worsened the situation even more. And cities away from the populated west of the country and relatively far from the Utrecht Mint suffered with these shortages. And the town of Roermond was in such a position, and they got fed up. So they ordered gas tokens from the Utrecht Mint in 1918. And to make sure that they would not be accepted in circulation and stay in Roermond, the tokens were made to look very different from the 2.5 cent coins, notably because of a central hole. The city arms, you will see them at the right there, were to become a standard design item on gas tokens. You also see a symbol for energy. In this case, it is a sun around the hole. You see the sun rays around the hole, right? Okay, very clever to use the hole as the sun. But later tokens would not be as wonderfully decorated as this one. Cost became an item in the production of gas tokens. What is then quite remarkable is that the 2.5 cent coins had a reeded edge, and that reeded edge was reproduced on a majority of the 2.5 cent tokens. Next, please. And this token from Roermond was a great success. The others waited 2 years to see if it would be, and when it was, there was a whole wave of tokens that came about in 1920. And among those, for Amsterdam and Rotterdam, the two largest cities in the Netherlands and the ones that set the tone for what a gas token would look like. And as a result, the demand for 2.5 cent coins plummeted. It plummeted to the extent that none were struck after this beautiful specimen from 1919, except in 1929, and during the Nazi occupation in the Second World War. The denomination of 2.5 cent was retired in 1948, but the gas tokens were still with the same diameter, at least many of them. To distinguish the tokens from the coins, that, as you can see them here, many had a notch or which is a semicircle, a shape cut out on the edge, and sometimes a hole. And in theory, the coins could no longer be used. In practice, handmade notches were made in coins, and they were kept around for emergencies. This was a practice that was tolerated as long as the coin was exchanged for a token immediately when the meter was emptied. You could not say, come back tomorrow, because you would get a fine. The Utrecht Mint developed a machine especially to cut the notches, and that machine strengthened their dominance of the gas token market, although we will see that there were competitors. Some tokens were holed, as I said, but that was more like indicating an important rise in prices, so that the the person who emptied the meter could see if you'd been using old tokens or not. But still, people didn't really pay all that much attention to what was on the token, because some tokens that were hold were actually not meant to be hold. They had moved municipality. They came into the hands of people living elsewhere, and they used them as a gas token. They just simply worked, and they worked to the extent that when they had to be notched or hold, they weren't even recognized as strange. Also, there's a whole series of sample tokens given to gas coin salesmen, and they did not have any notches and holes because that would have been ugly, wouldn't it? Amsterdam had apparently two priorities. You could see its token on the top left. One was to lighten the load of the meter collectors because they were using aluminium. And what is significant is the knob that you've seen on the meter. The knob you had to turn, you remember that, I hope, because aluminium coins by themselves are very difficult to use in meters and machines and vending machines and what have you. But in this case, they worked because they were separated by the knob from the others. So they didn't stick together, and they could be, even with a little mass, they could be separated from the rest. The second priority was to impress. They had this large imperial crown on the coat of arms, and there was a large sunburst, which was a symbol of the power of gas, of course. Rotterdam, by contrast, used an egalitarian design with just arms and a text. This is almost characteristic for the two cities. So they look alike and they're completely different at the same time. The competition I mentioned from the Utrecht Mint came from small German token producers, the Vienna Mint, and a large commercially aggressive Dutch silverware and metal producer commonly known as Begeer. Begeer set out time and again to prove that its products were better than those of the state mint. The lettering of its token for Den Helder is, which is right, that's where it is finer, and the gas meter is a nicely detailed indication of how this token was supposed to be used. The Vienna Mint went the other way. You can see this on the Haarlem token on the right there. They produced very simple tokens with a low relief, as cheap as it possibly could. And the city of Haarlem was attracted by the low price, and so they gave the order to the Vienna Mint. Problem was that when the time came that the token had to be holed and notched, the Utrecht Mint refused to do the job. And so Haarlem did it themselves, and they came up with this kidney-shaped hole that you see in the token. Bad losers, those people in Utrecht. For the next 20 years, the gas tokens changed very little. There was a little bit of an innovation, but it was quite timid. A number of municipalities started using simple, neutral geometrical figures such as squares or circles, triangles and crosses. The symbols remained, but they were expanded. Now you also see torches, flames, a gas lamp, and there on the token from Amsterdam, you see a gas storage tank. These have completely disappeared in the Dutch landscape, but when I was young, which is evidently a long time ago, they were still all around. The Vienna Mint developed their cost consciousness even more, and they made a prototype that was used by several different municipalities, but it was really, really simple. And I suppose that it could easily move from one municipality to the other. This is the Amersfoort token. which has a couple of rings, and that is about it. That is all the decoration they have. Nothing as complicated as a coat of arms. In May 1940, the Nazis occupied the Netherlands. They hoped to win over the Dutch royal family, but they had evacuated first to the UK, and then part of the family went to Canada. Instead, the royal family, which included the German-born Prince Bernhard, became a thorn in their sides. In 1942, Nazi policy changed to purging the House of Orange from Dutch culture. And part of that policy was to recall all circulating coins and replace them with quite different zinc coins, as shown on this slide. The 2.5 cents went from 23 to 20 millimeters, which was a bit of a disaster because that diameter would not be accepted by gas meters, and to change them all would have been a major job. Well, the Utrecht Mint rose to the occasion, and they came up with a single token design by the Nazi sympathizer Nico de Haas that was used for all municipalities and differed only by the name of the municipalities. All of these tokens are in zinc. Municipalities could order tokens in several denominations. There was the 2.5 cent, that was 23.5 millimeters. There was also a 10 cent of 15 millimeters, a 25 cent of 19 millimeters, and very hard to get, a 100 cent of 28 millimeters, which was actually meant for war industry. The tokens all had the same diameters as the pre-war royal coins that were by now withdrawn from circulation. And they all looked alike except for the municipality name. But that was not a problem for the occupiers because they had united the municipal enterprises into one nationally controlled system. They like to control that sort of thing nationally. And perhaps an unintended consequence was that the 10 cent size became a little bit more popular. The wartime emergency series had to be used all over the country, even in municipalities as different as Fisherman's Port Harlingen, shown upper left, the technology city Eindhoven, the seat of Philips, at lower right, a refuge for wealthy people who want to live outside but not too far from Amsterdam, Bloemendaal. The 100 cent pieces are really rare. I owe the picture to John Coy, who is the author of Standard Catalogue of Dutch Tokens. Thanks, John. The one from Bloemendaal is indeed the rarest of the 100 cent tokens, with a mintage of only 500. There is no industry in Bloemendaal. So who used these 100 cent token? I think it was people who couldn't be bothered to use smaller denominations. How arrogant can you get? All things have an end, and that's also went for the Second World War. In the aftermath, there were conflicting trends, going back to the pre-war tokens, remaining with the wartime tokens, but in a different metal, mostly brass, and adjusting to a new series of post-war coins that were issued in 1948 for the first time and expanded rather quickly. Aluminium made a comeback. It was, of course, a war material, could not be used during the Second World War. And 23.5 millimeters, a coin that no longer circulated, remained a mainstream diameter. Wartime changes, like a monopoly for the state mint and multiple denominations, were maintained. The 10 cents, 15 millimeters seems to have been accepted as a good replacement of the tokens of 23.5 millimeters. But a little bit, the 23.5 millimeters were used for several denominations. So the the linear connection between the 2.5 cent denomination and the diameter of 23.5 millimeter was lost. The new tokens were made of copper nickel. The new coins were made of copper nickel instead of silver, but the diameter remained the same, but an extension of the series with a guilder of a 2.5 guilders did have consequences. I'm fumbling again. Some of the last gas tokens received a star-shaped hole. The information is still incomplete, but it is likely that the star-shaped holes were used as transition tokens at the introduction of natural gas. And then we go to my final slide, which illustrates the post-war trends. Upper left is a token that is the same as the pre-war token from a conservative town, Haarlemmerliede. Upper right is a token with a wartime design, but in brass rather than zinc. Down left is an innovative design from a university town. And in the lower right corner, you can see the star punched out. With that, I hope I have been able to amuse you. POI lists 272 gas tokens, token issuing municipalities, most with multiple issues. So you will understand I could only show you a few representative issues. Complete listing is being made in World of Tokens, which is organized by World of Coins. All of you can help by donating pieces, donating pictures, or helping to build the listing, because the whole thing is in Wikipedia software. I also have an Excel database that I use to generate the statistics in this presentation. If you're interested, I will gladly send you a copy. Thank you for your attention. Over to the questions. Mr. Saar wonders what rapeseed is. Rapeseed is a plant. It is used as cattle feed. It is also used to press oil. And this oil can be used in the kitchen, but it can also be used as a basis for the biomass. Christian believes that it is Alkmaar rather than Haarlem. I'll have to check that, I'm sorry. Nothing from the Groningen area. Oh yes, there are plenty of tokens from the Groningen area. The problem is that I could not really show you all the different municipalities. Also, it would have been very dull because most people don't know where they are. But Groningen is one of the places where the natural gas flowed first because it was found there. So there might be some interesting things there. And when we next meet, I'll show you some. Was post-1945, was the Utrecht Mint out? Yes, it was. The Utrecht Mint got a monopoly for making gas tokens. Was that you, Alex, who wanted to say something?
I was just saying I have a picture of a Groningen gas token that I can show.
I would encourage you to do that in World Coins.
Okay.
All right. With that, I've come to the end of today's session. As they say on US television, again, you've been a wonderful audience. We had great discussions. We had fantastic presentations from the guys who preceded my humble effort to close out. This was all at such a level that I have every intention